Solutions to domestic violence. Who's got 'em? Some borough in the UK offered up a helpful little idea I read an article about recently. I wrote this topic like 2 weeks ago, but I kept having to push it aside in favor of more relevant stuff. But here we are finally. They propose that victims undergoing domestic abuse in their households should trade in their sharp kitchen knives for dull ones so they don't get stabbed to death if things get bad. Really getting to the core of the problem. Domestic abuse wouldn't be near as big of an issue if these gosh darn kitchen knives weren't so usable. This plan fails on so many levels. Firstly, what happens when your husband or lesbian lover, I've been told they have super high rates of abuse for some reason, although upon reflection, when you combine masculine aggression and feminine high-running emotions into one person, it sounds pretty explosive. But what happens when they open the knife drawer and find a whole set they don't recognize? You went and bought new mildly expensive kitchen implements without discussing it with them first? Ooh, that's gonna hit a sore spot with them, and then they'll probably exact revenge by hitting your sore spot a few times. Even if the program replaces your knives with dull, exact replicas, I think your abuser might be a little frustrated when they're in there cutting tomatoes for dinner and it's just squishing them instead of slicing through. Man, you ever try and cut things with dull knives? That can really kickstart a temper and backfire your efforts spectacularly. The main problem with this idea, though, is how the fuck it made any sense to anyone at all in any capacity. So your husband has flown into a rage and decided tonight is the night you die. He reaches for a dull-ass knife and tries to stab it into your chest. Question. It's still a knife, correct? So with enough force it will still break your skin, dig into your organs, and kill you? Is this accurate? And even if it couldn't, is he meant to just give up afterwards? Like, oh man, this isn't working. Guess you get a free pass. Good night, honey. Or will he just find a blunt instrument or perhaps use the two weapons perpetually attached to his wrists and carry out his fury to completion regardless? Unless you've also somehow exchanged your husband's fists for soccer boppers without him noticing, I think you're still in some trouble. Remember soccer boppers? Soccer boppers, more fun than a pillow fight! I will never forget that commercial. Soccer boppers might actually reduce the harm of domestic abuse if you could get your abuser to wear them. Like, no joke, like, yeah, it's a joke, but also that shit would work if he was game. He just comes into the room with soccer boppers on and you're like, well, I guess I forgot to take the trash out again. Please Google soccer boppers if you don't know what I'm talking about, though I hope context clues have at least led you to deduce that they are a children's toy worn on the hands that makes punches softer. It's a better idea than dull knives. You actually have to grant me that, which means you can't even be mad at me making light of domestic abuse because I've already proposed a solution better than what a British county's police force came up with. I'm out here making a difference. Sunburned Albino cares about battered women. Some might say even more than they care about themselves. But how does it get to that level, you know? How do women keep finding themselves trapped in these situations, trapping themselves after a certain point, if they're the type to always defend the abuser and lie for his benefit? Their relationships always have the same origin story. In the beginning, he was so thoughtful and nice and caring, and it was great. And then over time, he just changed. But he didn't really change, did he? He just stopped faking it. Abusers will always talk about how they're not in control, but that's gotta be bullshit because you were able to stay in control long enough to get your victims to love you enough to keep you out of jail at their own expense. You kept that facade up for as long as you did. Why not more? Hell, why not go your whole life? Then we got no problems at all. Just enjoy having a wife or girlfriend who loves you despite any flaws she might have, because they certainly don't outweigh the fatal flaw of yours that makes you want to bash her head in whenever she overcooks a pork chop. If you're watching this and you're being physically cruel and unconscionable to someone in your life, which statistically there's probably a couple of you, either turn yourself in and get paid what you deserve, seek therapy, or at least buy some soccer boppers. Dude, try and stay furious while you're soccer bopping your girlfriend. You won't be able to. You'll start laughing. That shit'll dissipate. Then, instead of punching her, try punching a picture of her. Or a wall, or a punching bag, which is kind of what that's made for, or a cardboard cutout of Hitler. Channel your aggression in ways that don't hurt the people who for some reason still care about you. Scarlett Johansson has made headlines again for comments regarding her previous casting controversies. She said, "I should be allowed to play any person or any tree or any animal." and I won't bury my opinion on this. In my view, she is 100% correct. It's been a long time since I defended her last, when the whole notion of her playing a woman who identified as a man to get ahead in the business world for some movie called Rub and Tug generated its in-the-moment controversy. Back then, she was criticized for taking a role away from a potential LGBTQ actress, despite Johansson herself being bi, which is the B in that acronym, so I guess there's even a hierarchy with that shit. And I made the point that saying she's taking away a role is specific and purposeful and wildly inaccurate language, because it's not as if anyone else had secured that role and subsequently lost it. Johansson was simply a producer for the movie and essentially made the role for herself. That doesn't take away shit. And I'm still seeing people use that specific phrase to describe this, and it's maddening because it's a blatant misread of the situation with intent to make her look like some kind of oppressive role thief. Also worth mentioning that this movie is in limbo and production has halted. It's not a victory for trans people when the role they wanted ends up disappearing altogether. What Scarlett Johansson said is spot on. She should be allowed to act like whatever she wants. It's not a demand for support or popularity, it's a demand for freedom of choice. And last I heard, lots of the people complaining about this are otherwise the type of people who are very supportive of a woman's right to choose. If she wants to play a man, let her. If she wants to play a transgender Muslim in a wheelchair with bone cancer, you don't have to go see that movie, but you don't have the authority, moral or otherwise, to tell her she can't do what she wants to do. You can whine all you want, but you're not entitled to your efforts yielding quantifiable results. In an industry where 007 is now a black woman, and The Little Mermaid is now a black woman, and Thor is a chick, and Batwoman is gender fluid, I wonder why character consistency only matters when it's convenient. To those who would ask why Scarlett Johansson should play anything but what she actually is, which is a white cisgender bisexual female, first I ask you to look up the movie White Chicks. Then I ask you to turn on your imaginations and also reconfigure your perspective on reality, because nobody seems to care about all the straight roles she's played despite being bi, myself included. I don't see you complaining when Jim Parsons plays a straight guy on Big Bang Theory or Neil Patrick Harris on How I Met Your Mother, and then you go, oh, but that's out of necessity because there aren't enough roles for people to be who they actually are, to which I'm like, since when has Hollywood been about being who you actually are? Since when has acting been about expressing yourself rather than channeling someone else? Eddie Redmayne was nominated for an Oscar for playing a trans woman in The Danish Girl despite not being trans, and he deserved it because he's a great actor, and it's that simple. And the fact that he isn't trans is what makes it all the more impressive. If a trans actor plays a trans person and the movie is just about them being trans, you're like, well, of course they're good at it. They've been practicing their whole life. It ain't that surprising. People make jokes about Scarlett Johansson's lack of range, while also trying to prohibit her from expanding it. Meanwhile, if a prominent trans actor just played various iterations of themselves across several movies, they'd still be known as trailblazing pioneers. This might come as a shock to some, but Hollywood isn't about diversity or representation. It's a numbers game about money, popularity, and quality, not caste list ethnicity checkboxes. People don't watch things solely because their production teams had inclusion writers. They watch things that are fucking good. If Crazy Rich Asians was just meh, far less people would have watched it, and the progressives would still have pretended they liked it, or just fully bought into their diversity tunnel vision. But it was a good-ass movie, and I've seen it twice. Same with Always Be My Maybe on Netflix, another Asian-led romantic comedy that's worth watching not purely because it's Asian-led, but because it's funny and good. I just watched Us, Jordan Peele's latest horror thriller, and I liked that shit too. Other people said it was just okay, and I get it. 20 minutes into the movie, it straight up stops being scary once the doppelganger family reveals who they are, but then it's still an engaging thriller from there till the end, where the last twist has all sorts of plot-related issues with it, but still, good movie, worth watching, black-led cast, a fact that isn't a qualifier for my decision to watch movies. I do not care what color the people are. And progressives are 27% of America, so the other 73% is in my apathetic camp, with the exception of maybe 0.05% white supremacists who only watch Birth of a Nation, and occasionally the movie Roots if they're in the mood for a feel-good comedy. This week has just been stream of consciousness fodder, because now we have a trans activist who is appearing before a Canadian human rights tribunal because different women at several waxing places refused to strip off all her scrotum and ball hair. Yes, this is happening. A trans woman who also happens to be a pedophile based on some of her posts trying to organize a pool party for 12-year-old girls to swim topless with no parents or guardians allowed, is in the middle of a battle for her human right to have her dick and balls waxed by women who only do vagina stuff. This is fucking parody, and yet it's fucking real. I don't know what to say about this, because the simple act of me reporting this story's existence should adequately state the ridiculousness inherent in it, and yet people defend this shit. There is no human right to having your balls waxed. Why on God's green earth must this be said out loud? Like most trans activists, this person gives trans activism a bad name. Lindsay Shepherd, the Canadian college student you may remember being in headlines for showing a Jordan Peterson video in a class and then being called into an informal meeting where she was told she may have violated the Ontario Human Rights Code, just another peak in the mountain range of absurdity. She just got banned from Twitter because this same trans activist was harassing her and saying sick shit about her newborn baby, and Lindsay, out of anger, called her a fat, ugly man, which is the goddamn truth, by the way, if you've seen this person. She's banned from Twitter now. Permanently. Not the activist who wants to force women to wax her balls and tries to organize pool parties with topless 12-year-olds minus parental supervision, the free speech advocate who called her a fat, ugly man. 3 accurate series of observations. No longer will her dangerous ideas and agendas plague the bastion of pure good-natured discourse that is Twitter. You know, that site that terrorist organizations are still on? Life is a joke. Laugh or cry. But we ain't even done. Because there's one more story. You might have seen the I Stand With Erica hashtag circulating around after a Democratic lawmaker from Georgia named Erica Thomas posted a sobbing reaction to an incident in which she alleged that a man at a grocery store who was angry about her having too many items in the express lane called her a bitch and told her to go back where she came from. This coming on the heels of that Trump debacle with the squad of Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, and Rashida Tlaib. So now that particular phrase packs even more punch than usual, which leads to instant media coverage. Everybody saw this and promoted the I Stand With Erica hashtag. Then the man in question came on the news and said that he did in fact call her a bitch, but he never told her to go back where she came from because he's a self-proclaimed lifelong Democrat and always will be, and he's Cuban to boot. He had posted stuff on Facebook in solidarity with the squad just a week earlier and accused Erica of lying for political gain. Erica then walked back virtually all of her initial comments, admitting he didn't actually say go back where you came from, and then just saying a bunch of bullshit about, but it sort of felt like he did though. Then, earlier this morning, she walked back her walk back and was like, no, he definitely said go back where you came from, because she has no choice but to double down now. She's already being called the next Jussie Smollett. The hate hoax hashtag was trending above the I Stand With Erica hashtag within 24 hours of the incident, and prominent left-wing Twitter figures have been silently deleting their Erica tweets hoping nobody would notice. Since she was in the express lane with too many items, which started the spat in the first place, I'm willing to believe that he said something akin to go back to the regular checkout line, and in her trademark hell hath no fury like a black woman scorned, coupled with the recent news of the week concerning Trump, she misconstrued that to mean something that it wasn't because she was spending too much time screaming and not enough time listening. They had the two of them on the news outside the grocery store being interviewed at the same time, and they were arguing with each other. It was quite a sight. But this story proves that the media has learned nothing. They jump on shit that sounds bad without doing any sort of investigating first. They rally the troops around the victimhood narrative, and they know that a lot of people are never going to follow the story long enough to know that it was overblown nonsense. They did it with Jussie Smollett. They did it with the Native Americans versus Covington Catholic thing. They take every opportunity because what passes for news today is person says racist thing happened instead of person proves racist thing happened. Proof is antiquated. They don't want it. And they don't need it when the goal is to stir up the base and reinforce completely false premises to get people to vote your way. You know what rarely makes the news? Person proves racist thing didn't happen. Because they don't report on that shit. Or they'll do what the New York Times did and do the headline, person says racist thing happened, and then at the bottom of the article they slide in the fact that the person walked back the racist thing she said happened like it's of no consequence. That way they can claim journalistic integrity despite knowing people read headlines, not articles. It's all so see-through, it's amazing anybody allows themselves to continue to be fooled by it. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino. And I'll see you guys next time.